We must use time creatively. The past is prophetic in that it asserts loudly that wars are poor chisels for carving out peaceful tomorrows. Property is intended to serve life, and no matter how much we surround it with rights and respect, it has no personal being. It is part of the earth man walks on. It is not man. A riot is the language of the unheard. The art of acceptance is the art of making someone who has just done you a small favor wish that he might have done you a greater one. We who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. The Negro needs the white man to free him from his fears. The white man needs the Negro to free him from his guilt. The question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. The nation and the world are in dire need of creative extremists. Violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. I am not unmindful of the fact that violence often brings about momentary results. Nations have frequently won their independence in battle, but in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. Pity may represent little more than the impersonal concern which prompts the mailing of a check, but true sympathy is the personal concern which demands the giving of one's soul. Since being in India, I am more convinced than ever before that the method of nonviolent resistance is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for justice and human dignity. The moral arc of the universe bends at the elbow of justice. Philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice which make philanthropy necessary. War is a poor chisel to carve out tomorrow. It is incontestable and deplorable that Negroes have committed crimes, but they are derivative crimes. They are born of the greater crimes of the white society. Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. Indeed, it is a weapon unique in history, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. The hope of a secure and livable world lies with disciplined nonconformists who are dedicated to justice, peace, and brotherhood. A nation or civilization that continues to produce soft-minded men purchases its own spiritual death on the installment plan. There is nothing more tragic than to find an individual bogged down in the length of life, devoid of breadth. When you are right, you cannot be too radical. When you are wrong, you cannot be too conservative. If I wish to compose or write or pray or preach well, I must be angry. Then all the blood in my veins is stirred and my understanding is sharpened. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? And vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? It takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. If you have always believed that everyone should play by the same rules and be judged by the same standards, that would have gotten you labeled a radical 60 years ago, a liberal 30 years ago, and a racist today. The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling. People who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything. It is a way to take people's wealth from them without having to openly raise taxes. Inflation is the most universal tax of all. The first lesson of economics is scarcity. There is never enough of anything to fully satisfy all those who want it. The first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics. If people in the media cannot decide whether they are in the business of reporting news or manufacturing propaganda, it is all the more important that the public understand that difference and choose their news sources accordingly. The least productive people are usually the ones who are most in favor of holding meetings. The next time some academics tell you how important diversity is, ask how many Republicans there are in their sociology department. The word racism is like ketchup. It can be put on practically anything, and demanding evidence makes you a racist. Would you bet your paycheck on a weather forecast for tomorrow? If not, then why should this country bet billions on global warming predictions that have even less foundation? Each new generation born is in effect an invasion of civilization by little barbarians who must be civilized before it is too late. The most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best. Freedom has cost too much blood and agony to be relinquished at the cheap price of rhetoric. Socialism in general has a record of failure so blatant that only an intellectual could ignore or evade it. The people made worse off by slavery were those who were enslaved. Their descendants would have been worse off today if born in Africa instead of America. Put differently, the terrible fate of their ancestors benefited them. You will never understand bureaucracies until you understand that for bureaucrats, procedure is everything and outcomes are nothing. There are few things more dishonorable than misleading the young. What is ominous is the ease with which some people go from saying that they don't like something to saying that the government should forbid it. When you go down that road, don't expect freedom to survive very long. It is amazing that people who think we cannot afford to pay for doctors, hospitals, and medication somehow think that we can afford to pay for doctors, hospitals, medication, and a government bureaucracy to administer it. The march of science and technology does not imply growing intellectual complexity in the lives of most people. It often means the opposite. The old adage about giving a man a fish versus teaching him how to fish has been updated by a reader. Give a man a fish, and he will ask for tartar sauce and French fries. Moreover, some politician who wants his vote will declare all these things to be among his basic rights. Much of the social history of the Western world over the past 3 decades has been a history of replacing what worked with what sounded good. Capitalism knows only one color. That color is green. All else is necessarily subservient to it. Hence, race, gender, and ethnicity cannot be considered within it. Education is not merely neglected in many of our schools today, but is replaced to a great extent by ideological indoctrination. The most fundamental fact about the ideas of the political left is that they do not work. Therefore, we should not be surprised to find the left concentrated in institutions where ideas do not have to work in order to survive. Stopping illegal immigration would mean that wages would have to rise to a level where Americans would want the jobs currently taken by illegal aliens. What multiculturalism boils down to is that you can praise any culture in the world except Western culture, and you cannot blame any culture in the world except Western culture. Although the big word on the left is compassion, the big agenda on the left is dependency. Elections should be held on April 16th, the day after we pay our income taxes. That is one of the few things that might discourage politicians from being big spenders. Talkers are usually more articulate than doers, since talk is their specialty. If you are not prepared to use force to defend civilization, then be prepared to accept barbarism. Both free speech rights and property rights belong legally to individuals, but their real function is social, to benefit vast numbers of people who do not themselves exercise these rights. Liberalism is totalitarianism with a human face.